welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. I am your host, Max Mosier, grateful to be back with you on Shang Chi weekend. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thanks for making us part of your podcast experience. I'm here with two other Infinity Bros again today, back from a long hiatus. It's Infinity Bro Jarret. Jarret, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I feel like I came back refreshed, charged. I'm a new man. I'm not quite like Robbie, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, nice. We're 30 seconds in. We're putting a inside joke already in elite level podcasting. Look at us. We're killing it right now. It's awesome. Speaking of killing it, this podcast will probably end soon because he's on, but it's Infinity Bro Zayne. Zayne, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here at the same time as Jarret. Feel like we caught some lightning in a bottle. And
when was the last time this happened? You and me.
Oh man, I don't even know. Like literally, I don't even have the answer to that.
Dude, last week we talked about a review. We're going to get to our special guest, which is probably the reason you're listening or here anyway. We had a review talk about episode 41, Zane, and apparently in the comments of like the show description on that episode, Jarret said something really spicy. I don't know what it was. And you complimented Apple. So that was like, I read that and had no idea what happened in episode 41, but I was like, we do a great job on plugging ourselves in those comments. And so I also want to rub it in your face that you complimented Apple one time in your face.
You said how much you loved Apple. Yeah. I remember that.
That definitely was not what happened. But right. I don't remember the specific thing, so, I mean...
Well, we got a great rating out of it, so thanks for complimenting Apple one time. We appreciate that. You sold yourself out to get the review, and for that, we thank you.
Well, anything for the bit.
Yeah, for the bit. Well, if you're listening today, you are definitely familiar with our next guest. We have Justin Mousseau, a.k.a. Moose, from Tik Tok, and I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm fangirling out a little bit. This is a big moment. This is my favorite guest we've ever had on. So, Justin, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming to the Infinity Bros podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
I'm going to try not to stutter too much when I ask you questions. And I really, really, really... I disagree with people sometimes on this show. I don't know how I'm going to do that this episode with you. I'm going to try, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. And so that's going to be fun to see how that goes. Thankfully, Zane and Jarret will be here to hold me accountable. Justin, where can the people find you, and where are you doing most of your work right now on social media?
I think the bulk of it can be found on my TikTok page. I'm at moose_0 on there. I do a lot of comic talk, a lot of coverage of comic book movie news, comic news recommendations, character deep dives. So if you're looking for quick 101 content, little compacted bits of comic book knowledge, come my way.
Are you concerned about this WandaVision picture that was put on Marvel's Instagram page? Do you think that's something?
I think it is. I think that Marvel, after the No Way Home trailer release, and people were like, wait a minute, in WandaVision, it said August 23rd was a special date, and they didn't know why, and that was the date the trailer came out. And then Marvel went, yeah, we planned that, and to show that we planned it, here's another date that was circled in WandaVision that also definitely has meaning. No, I think they're leaning into it. They're just doubling down and being like, yeah, no, that was always the plan. You see, it's all it's a flat circle. It all kind of it's in Ouroboros. We have red strings on a cork board going back years. We had this planned for forever. But no, I definitely think it's going to be something. I don't know exactly what it is. I would anticipate another trailer, but we will have to wait another week or so and see.
Well, we're going to get to hear a lot of your thoughts on a lot of topics today. We're going to talk about Shang Chi. Obviously, the reason you're here, this is the first MCU movie, Jarret, that's in theaters without being on Disney+. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about What If Episode 4 with my favorite MCU character, Doctor Strange, and talking about him just descending, Breaking Bad almost is how I would parallel that episode. We'll give a spoiler review of that. And then we're going to finish the show with our top 5 Shang-Chi moments. And you'll get to hear kind of Moose's perspective on that. It's going to be great. But before we enter into any of that, we have to make sure that Justin goes through the Infinity Gauntlet.
Are you a heel or a baby face? If you could make any flavored Cheez-It, what would it be? Is it pronounced Grogu or Groku? If Keanu Reeves isn't in the movie, can it be star-studded? It's time for the Infinity Gauntlet, here on the Infinity Bros podcast.
If you've never listened to our show before, the Infinity Gauntlet is a time where we put our special guests through a series of random questions. They're not told these questions ahead of time, and it's a way for you as the audience to get to know these individuals. It's also a way for us to get to know them and playfully banter with them. And it's sometimes odd coming on a new show, not knowing anybody. You got to build a little chemistry before you get into the nitty gritty. So, Justin, we're going to let you do that. I'm going to go first, and then Jarret, you're going to go next. So, Justin, I'm going to start you with a really hard one right out the gate that I know is going to take you a little time, but I'd love to hear you describe your personality using one individual comic book issue.
I mean, the one that immediately leaps to mind is, I think it's the first or maybe the second issue of Spider-Man and the X-Men, where Spider-Man goes to teach a class of the like Z-list X students, and he ends up taking them on a field trip to the Savage Lands, where they run into the classic Marvel villain Sauron, who is a giant pterodon. He's a scientist who turned himself into a pterodon because he's a huge nerd and because he likes dinosaurs. And I think it's I love that whole run because it's not very. It doesn't take itself super seriously, and it's not concerned with trying to maintain any kind of canon. It's just kind of throwing things together that would be funny to watch Spider-Man have to like protect these like kids who have a wild range of abilities, some of them useful, some of them not, in these various dangerous situations. And it's also, I think, the comic that has the now very much memed panel of Spider-Man talking to Sauron, being like, "But you're like a genius. You could cure cancers." And he's like, and Sauron's like, "I don't want to cure cancer. I just want to make dinosaurs." And he's like, "Yeah, that's a solid villain motivation."
We also learned, I think, you have a deep passion for dinosaurs, is what I'm hearing right here. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. I have been known to enjoy dinosaurs. Yeah.
well, okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Jarret, we'll pass it off to you. What's your Infinity Gauntlet question for Justin?
I love that you brought up the mutants because it's exactly what I'm here for. So Justin, this is my Infinity Gauntlet to you. I'm going to throw it down. You have to throw a dinner party with the leaders of the world in order to achieve world peace. Okay? There's some rules to this dinner party. You have 3 mutants, and the 3 mutants you choose can't directly interfere with the leaders, right? No mind control, nothing like that. It's just them helping you throw this dinner party. It has to be so entertaining that you achieve world peace. Who are your 3 mutants and why?
Okay. Now, first off, I know you said entertaining in there, so that's a big one. So I think for that, I think I'm gonna go. First and foremost, I'm gonna have Glob Herman in there.
Love that.
He's so non-offensive, and I don't think the leaders of the free world could reasonably look at Glob, be a little off-put at first, but then over the course of the evening, like completely see that like, oh, they shouldn't judge books by their cover, and like not all mutants are to be feared. I think he's the heart play to really kind of once again like try to ease any possible anti-mutant sentiments that could be bringing in there with them. That it's not, without having to manipulate their pheromones or mess with their minds. It's just a good, easy play to the heart. The next X-Man, I think I would bring in.
Or you're going to scare the crap out of him.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. He could also. He also, I feel like he could double as entertaining if once they've gotten used to Glob and once they've kind of like adjusted to him, then he could do the party trick where he lights himself on fire and runs around the room a bit. Like, yep. I think that's a solid. That's always a fun one. I think another one now. and again, this is me showing a little bit because I'm putting together a TikTok of I was doing research today of a video of characters people commonly assume are mutants but actually aren't, and so I've had to redouble on my own things. Correct me if I'm wrong. Dazzler is a mutant, correct? Correct. Okay, so she would be number 2. Again, we're going with entertaining. She's a pop star. She's a celebrity. World leaders love getting good PR pictures with celebrities. And I think next to Layla Cheney, she is one of 2 X-Men who are also double as pop stars. So I think she again she's good. She's disarming. She's good around people. She knows how to handle press events. So I think she would know how to keep the dinner conversation going, and really kind of help establish a move, keep the vibes up, as it were. And then number 3, it's impossible to to pardon the pun. There's an X factor that you want to bring to one of these events, and not the team X factor, because that would be a very much seen as a threat.
Yeah.
That wouldn't end well. But Dupe just has that je ne sais quoi, that just really people relate to him. You want to be friends with him. You want to talk to him, and again, in terms of bringing entertainment to the party, he can just pull things out of himself and make things disappear within himself as needed. And again, you're gonna want to document it. He's a known documentarian. He'll have his camera with him. So I think that I think that this very strong and absolutely normal collection of mutants of Duke, Glob, Herman, and Dazzler
This is
would
so
really
good.
go a long ways towards solidifying human-mutant relations.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, actually, I look at Dupe's face and all I can see is world peace. So yeah, I think you hit it right
right?
on the head.
Yeah.
My goodness. This comes from Infinity Bro Isaac. He says, if you had complete creative control over a comic book TV series, what IP would you choose to adapt?
Ooh, this is a good one. Here's the thing. I've been loving the Marvel streaming shows since the Netflix series were it started. And the Disney Plus series have done a really good job of continuing the stories of the MCU and fleshing out these characters and helping to kind of build bridges and everything. But a thing that I feel is critically missing is a good honest and not pastiche of a sitcom, of something that is just something you can kind of laugh at and enjoy the foibles of whatever these characters are doing. And so for me, I think it would come down to one of 2 things that I would adapt. I would either adapt the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, which is another one of my absolute favorite comic runs. It has all the best parts of being a good heist story while also being very funny. And it was again, it is for me something I look for in a comic book when I'm kind of jumping in is I like it when a writer and an artist and a creative team can make me really, really, really like a character that I would never have considered even having an opinion on before. And for me, did it for me for both Boomerang and Shocker. And it's just a really interesting look at these guys who are not, again, they're not A-list villains. They're having to come together as a version of the Sinister Six just to start to be considered a threat. And it's just a great story of watching them see who is going to be the person to pull the next double cross, and who is working for who. And that would be one that I would want to. And another one that I would absolutely want to see in a TV series would be Ecstatics, which is with the mention of Dupe, I think is one of my favorite X teams. And as I've pitched before, I think I tweeted about it, where like the way that I would actually really want to do an X-Statix series is tricky, because I would want to stay true to their comic roots, and which means that I would start with an X-Force TV series.
Right.
And it would be the X-Force characters we've seen established in movies already: Deadpool, Domino, Cable, maybe bring back Shatterstar, introduce like some of the new characters, introduce like, you know, either, depending on how much they would want to address it, either bring in different characters for like, you know, like Sunspot, or like, you know, like these various like Richter, these characters who have been around like in X Force, and have like 6 episodes of this kind of like somewhat, you know, there's you know a mole in the X-Men. There's somebody who's trying to, you know, track them down. Like they're having to do the dirty work of protecting mutant kind, and trying to, you know, be, you know, the Black Ops team that needs to be there, and finding out this, you know, giant conspiracy that's going on that might involve the rest of Marvel heroes without even some of them even realizing it, and this whole thing. And I want to build for 6 episodes, and episode 5 would end on a real big cliffhanger with a real shocking character death, and then episode 6 would start, and it would be the Ecstatics team, and it would be a completely different style of shooting. It would be more of like sort of the like confessional style, like Office or Parks and Rec, to camera kind of like comedy stuff of these mutants trying to live in a house with each other, and like trying to like go about their lives, bouncing what it would be like to, you know, shoot a reality show and everything, do that, and then have that not address anything that had happened or what is going on for like a good 2 or 3 episodes, until the X-Force comes back and like forcibly takes back the TV show from them. But I think again, it's I don't like controversy for controversy's sake in comics, but I do like Ecstatics for being a very blatant middle finger to anyone who was a monthly fan of X-Force, where they just decided, we're just going to completely change every direction of this comic from this cliffhanger issue to the next issue, and not really talk about it for like 10 or 12 issues, and just let the angry letters pile in of like, what the hell is going on? Why did you do this? Like, it was in the middle of an arc. Like, it wasn't like we didn't know what was going to happen. But I also just love Ecstatics because, like, I feel like, I mean, I'm a sucker for like Michael Allred's art, and I feel like you can kind of capture that, like the same kind of way that the iZombie show, kind of had that same kind of aesthetic for Ecstatics, of having this kind of like almost a pop art feel to it. And I also just kind of liked, like, it was like it was a unique X team, which you weren't really seeing a lot of in like the early to mid 2000s. Like, again, like next to like Grant Morrison's new X-Men, like it was a lot of kind of like by the book, by the numbers, in terms of what was going on with the X-Men. So I like that Ecstatics was kind of like a shot in the arm of it being just weird and out there and inane in a time when the X-Men were clad in leather and wanted to be taken a lot more seriously.
Jarret, are you frustrated now at this point in our podcast that you are not the elite comic book mind on the show anymore?
You know, honestly, I welcome it. I think it's, you know, my back has actually been killing me, and I've had to see several.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Like,
yeah,
now that I can lighten the load a little bit, it's actually quite
yeah. It's always nice, isn't it? It's always nice. This one comes from Infinity Bro Mark. He says, which superhero would you want to start a cult with, and what would the cult's focus be on?
I think, because here's the thing, like, there are characters that are almost designed to, at some point in their life, have an arc where they like have a cult, just, you know, by their nature, whether they are like, you know, like Thor or Storm, whether they're like divine, or whether they're characters like who is it, Empath in the X-Men comics, who can just manipulate people's emotions for his own gain. But I honestly think, of all the characters, all the superheroes that I could choose from to start a cult. I mean, it's hard because, like, right now in the comics, there's already a really good, strong cult going on with Xavier, Magneto, and Moira McTaggart that is about to come to a crashing end that I'm excited to watch happen. I think I would actually probably want to start a cult with Jamie Madrox with Multiple Man. Just because it would be really easy to get the numbers up at first of just like
so funny.
really making it look like we already have like a huge following. It's like a cheaper way of getting like Twitter bots, like buying followers and stuff like that. It's just you just
Jamie.
all the copies.
There's a lot of people here.
All the copies just make their own social media profiles, and they all get they all dye their hair and get different kind of facial hair, and they just don't touch each other, and like that's like we are promoting like personal space, and we're promoting like that. And like like social distancing, like promoting like
it's a COVID friendly arc.
Exactly, yeah. It's just that, and it's just trying to just promote that, I guess, just because we have time to kill, and I think it'll be a good time,
You lost points for not saying Moon Knight, but then you gained them back and then some for like all that explanation you just gave. Spot on.
Moon Knight. I mean, Moon Knight would be tricky though. Like, Moon Knight is a dangerous dude. Like you don't know. The other problem with Moon Knight is that you literally don't know who you're dealing with
Which
day to day. Like
is, yeah.
I don't like sure. Like I'm gonna go into business with Jake Lockley, and then all of a sudden, like Mr. Knight's gonna show up in his like clean white suit, and it's been like, well, great. Now I have to pay like he's here like for like do like taxes or some shit. Like it's gonna be bad. I mean,
one's the CEO, one's the CFO, one's the
exactly. Yeah. The other guy's just the taxi driver.
Right.
It's
With all due respect, Justin, you said that you like Xavier and Magneto had their own cult. Based on the answers we've gotten, I really have a hard time thinking you were going to go either of them.
Oh no, yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, again, I don't want to step on their toes. They're already trying.
Good point.
They're having a real hard time right now trying to maintain the balance of things that are going on with Krakoa, with people now starting to question like, why can't we bring back clones of mutants? And hey, how come no one with any precognitive powers was allowed to be revived?
We're not trying to be offensive to them, figuratively or fictionally. We're this is a safe spot. Zane, close us out with the final Infinity.
I absolutely hate that I'm going last because you guys have just had these pointed, direct comic book questions, and my question is so stupid.
Oh, that's awesome. That's even better. This is exactly what the one we should end on.
That's why I'm just like, I'm just going to lean into the bit. But quick, before I go into my question, I just want to say, to go back to the dinosaur thing, I'm wearing my Welcome to Ela Nublar shirt. So I just had to throw that in there. But my question, Justin, is... Okay. What is the best shape of noodle?
See, no, this is tough because like
I love you, Zane. Never change.
Ideally that you're looking for somewhere that falls in a sweet spot of something that is able to retain a lot of sauce because ideally you know like. With most noodles, you have some kind of sauce, whether it be like a broth or like an actual like a pesto or a Alfredo, and something that is easy to maneuver to get the sauce to your mouth. So honestly, I think the perfect pot like noodle shape would probably be. I would say a macaroni, but not like an elbow macaroni. Like those like long spiral macaronis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
Like those would be my preferred because you get a nice you get a nice heft, and you get enough noodle per bite where you don't have to get like a whole spoonful of it to feel like you've like eaten something. You can like spear one or two with a fork and still have plenty of sauce and plenty of noodle.
Because it's got that surface area.
I think. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that would be mine.
Infinity Bros fans, you guys can't see this, but Zane just pulled out a notebook, and it has a bunch of words scribbled out on the front, and the only one you can read is noodle. So we're learning a lot about Zane today.
But what I really appreciate about it is Justin not only heard it, but really, really took it for what it was.
Right. He just went with it.
And really was like, yeah, Zane, let me enlighten you now.
He gave us a TED Talk, which was beautiful.
Sit at my feet and let me tell you what I think on this subject. So, well, Justin, you have survived the Infinity Gauntlet. Congratulations. You pat yourself on the back. You never know what's coming at you, as you just literally saw and or heard. So great job, Justin, and we're super pumped you're here. Let's head to the main event. The reason you're here, probably if you're not here for Justin, you're here for this. We want to talk about Shang Qi. This is going to be a complete spoiler breakdown of this movie, as well as What If Episode 4. So we want to make sure that you know this is a spoiler warning.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
Additionally, this may be the first time you are listening to us, and so we want to make sure you're familiar with our rating system and how we will be rating things today.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
Shang Chi, as of September 4th, this was at 8:20 this morning, made $29.6 million on Thursday night. That was 0.3 behind Fast 9. It is currently on track for 75 to 85 million coming this Monday. It's obviously going to have a star-studded cast of what I believe will be future star-studded people. But let me get into the synopsis and then tell you about who's in it, and then we will hear the non-spoiler reviews. Shang Chi, the master of unarmed weaponry-based kung fu, is forced to confront his past after being drawn into the Ten Rings organization. Destin Daniel Cretton is the director. The writers are Dave Callahan, Destin Daniel Cretton, and Andrew Lanham. This stars Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, Zhang Meng as Xu Xiaoling, Tony Leung as Wenwu, and then Florian. Ironically, this is the hardest one, Jarret, for us. We were talking about this even pre-show. Monteanu, Fala Chen as Lee, and then Andy Lei as Death Dealer, who we actually didn't even get to see who that was under the mask. But for those that were curious, that was who was in that as well. There was other individuals there, but those are the key ones. We want to start with our non-spoiler review first, though, for those that have yet to see it and maybe want to hear Justin's thoughts or our thoughts. So, Justin, would you give us your rating of Shang-Chi on a scale of 1 to 6 and tell us just your brief overview from a non-spoiler perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I went into this movie with very high expectations. It was the movie I was most excited about that was coming out this year. I think that Eternals looks like it's going to be gorgeous, and obviously No Way Home is going to be this crazy, another jumping on into point for the next big part of the MCU. But Shang-Chi was new, and it was a new addition in many ways to the MCU. And all in all, I would give this movie a solid 6. I would give this. It was a damn near perfect movie in my eyes in terms of just about everything. It was its own thing while still having just enough of a tie to the rest of the MCU so that you knew that it was still part of the Marvel universe, but it's still very much its own thing. The pacing of it was great. The action was unbelievable, and it left me wanting to see more of everyone involved. So yeah, I loved it.
This is the 25th Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Simu Liu tweeted at Marvel in December 2018, essentially asking for this role. And then earlier, I believe a week or two ago, he actually thanked them for giving the role and then, quoted his own tweet. It is the first superhero film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with an Asian leading protagonist. Jarret, let's hear your review for Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I mean, going into this, I had a few things working in my favor that was already raising my hype level. It's rare that I hear about a superhero movie and I'm like, wow, I don't know anything about this character. Shang Chi was one in the comics that I saw very rarely. It's not one that I dug into pretty frequently. I think the thing that I saw him the most in was maybe Spider Island, or I think he was in Immortal Iron Fist for a bit. So it was cool, right? Like that it was this new and unknown space to explore. It promised to be this like awesome kung fu experience. And I'm a big fan of Simu's from Kim's Convenience, which is not without its issues, but a fantastic series. And so my hype level like through the roof. Saying that, this movie paid off that and then some. Like 5.8, and the few minor things are very nitpicky. Maybe a 6 on a second rewatch. I don't know, but it delivered all the things that it promised, which was a great story, absolutely incredible action scenes, phenomenal acting. I mean, it was everything I wanted and more.
Bill Pope is the cinematography director for this. He is known for movies such as Spider-Man 2, recently The Jungle Book in 2016. One of my personal favorites, Baby Driver. I know that is a polarizing film. Some of us in the Infinity Bros love it. Some of us do not love it so much. He did Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Zane, I know you might be the biggest Scott Pilgrim versus the World fan in the world, Zane. But he also did The Matrix, which has an insane amount of kung fu and is what I would assume a huge reason he was chosen for this role. Zane, let's hear your review of Shang-Chi.
Yeah, no, like basically like a lot of what Justin and Jarret said. This really was a movie that I didn't know what we were going to get out of it. So that had a lot of excitement for me to, launching kind of into phase 4. Like, yeah, this was a character that kind of like Jarret said, kind of saw in the background of stuff, never really dove into this character. So I was like, I feel like there's a lot you can do here. Like there's a lot of stuff to work with. There's, the whole movie's a canvas to tell this story. And I felt they did fantastic for it. I got to give it a 6 out of 6. Like, not only do I, like, it's just a nostalgia thing of just loving kung fu movies. Like, it hit that and more. And I was trying to figure out kind of like a simplified way of explaining it as I was driving back from the theater today. And I was just like, this movie is the kung fu movie that I didn't know I needed, but I am 100% glad it's in the MCU. Because, like, it was not expected. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know how they're going to do this, but they did it wonderfully.
Yeah, when I walked out of this one, Zane, I was like, I can't wait to hear what Zane thinks, because this bad boy just had you all written all over it as far as I'm concerned.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I was like, this could come out as one of Zane's favorite movies. The late Brad Allen, who passed away actually weeks ago, was the martial arts choreographer for the fight scenes of this. Obviously well known for being part of stunts with the movie Gorgeous, starring Jackie Chan. He did stunts in other movies. Again, we talked about Scott Pilgrim versus the World earlier. He was also involved in that, as well as The Kingsman. And in a couple other movies, he was actually solo a Star Wars story. Yeah, that's really well known for their kung fu, isn't it? Yeah, that's the one you think of kung fu. You think
definitely
of the Solo movie. No, I'm going to give this a 5.5. I'm going to echo all the good things you guys are saying. So there's really nothing for me to add in that. Only good things I'd add aside from it were I think Simu Liu is absolutely a star. There has been some people being like, oh, they have to pick new people that can stand with the Avengers. It's like that, for one, to me, that feels foolish because they either got it or they don't. So put them up front and we'll find out. But this guy clearly has it, and I really think he nails comedic beats way more than people give him credit for. I absolutely adored one comedic thing we'll talk about later that happened at the beginning and the end with him and Awkwafina's character. I really liked Awkwafina in this. She was I love her as an actress, but I was a little worried about having her in it. And like, are they just going to make her somebody who's cracking really annoying jokes? That wasn't the case. She was very funny, and the stakes felt relatively great. My big issues are the third act gets a little bit formulaic, And one particular character is in this as a surprise character that drives me nuts. I'm going to talk about it. I'm pretty sure if you've seen this movie, you have an understanding of who I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil that for you. So you can maybe try to figure that out upon first watching. So from this point on, consider this your spoiler warning. Let's dive into the spoiler discussion here. What did you guys think? Because it's irritating me, and I want to get it out of the way right now for myself, of Trevor Slattery returning Ben Kingsley.
I loved it. I loved it so stinking much.
See, here's the thing: is I went in suspecting that I knew they were going to do something with it because, like they've had this setup of the Mandarin from Iron Man 3, and then the Long Live the King like one shot that they did after it, and honestly, I was fully expecting the movie to just like open with Mandarin just straight up murking Trevor Slattery, of just being
right.
assuming my name and for doing stuff in my name, as a dishonoring kind of thing. But honestly, by the end of the movie, I was hoping he wasn't going to die. I was like, this is it's the most unexpected character development in the MCU. I think to date, the last person I was expecting to get a continuation of an arc was him, and just to watch him go from this essentially a puppet figurehead to fall from grace to go into prison for a little while, and then get grabbed from prison and kept in a worse prison as a court jester for this eternal warlord who thought it was entertaining the way he would do Shakespeare soliloquies and thought he was hallucinating a monster, that he was his only companion, of getting to see of course he wasn't useful in the fight. He's not a fighter, so I'm glad they didn't try to force him into having a heroic moment. I'm happy that his moment was still being a coward of playing dead to make sure that he could avoid I think that they kept it in line with the character very nicely. And while I don't think I need to see anything else of Trevor Slattery in the MCU, I'm happy he wasn't just absolutely killed off in the beginning.
I just feel like this was such a waste of my time, Justin. I'll be frank, I hated it. I absolutely despise this storyline in Iron Man 3. The short that they did with him, I've watched it once. I don't care now. And I heard that they had put it on Disney Plus. I just think this was the one, Kevin Feige's just I can do this and there's nothing you guys can do about it. And it was the one thing that took me out of the movie, to be honest. Everything was going smoothly till they turned the corner in that jail cell, and he's sitting there exactly as you're saying, doing the Shakespeare. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We're going about this again. And then he can talk to this animal? Come on, people. It drove me bananas. It was my one big gripe in the whole film. And I'm okay with them acknowledging him. I totally get that based on Wenwu and clearly his tension with power. I totally understand why he would make that choice. And even in Iron Man 3, as much as I didn't like it, I can understand one movie doing that. But 2 movies, I'm like, come on. You nailed it, though. It's the most unexpected character development that I didn't want. But I got. So, Zane, what'd you think of this?
I thought it was just so dumb, yet it just worked.
Oh my god.
It worked. It was just...
I'm alone.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're alone on this one, bud. But yeah.
Oh, no.
It was completely, like you said, it turned that corner, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. What's this going to be? And then you get to that point, you're just like, okay, are they going to kill him off? Or they just be like, oh, you're going to have this brief moment, in this prison cell, and then you're going to continue the movie. And then it became this random, oh no, I gotta come on your journey with you. And then just the odd beats of humor he would throw into stuff. And you were just like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't stop laughing. It's dumb enough that it just works. I was just like...
Yeah, there were a couple of times I laughed. I'll give you
and I think, in my opinion, it didn't overpower anything of the story. It was its own off to the side. They didn't try to do anything else with him other than, hey, here's this kooky guy that we're throwing in, get a couple laughs from him. but like it didn't take anything else from the story outside of, hey, we're gonna advance this quick. Here's how we're gonna get through like this maze of trees, and he's just like randomly, oh yeah,
This death maze.
and
my
he's just
gosh.
all chill about it. Oh yeah,
So
Maurice
good.
says you need to go faster. You're gonna take a right. It's just like, wait, what's going on? And then you get through that, and you're just like, I was laughing this entire time. It was so stupid, but I can't knock it. Like, I enjoyed it.
It's so the MCU. That's
Yes,
the other thing.
yeah.
It's so like, hey, there's this massive high stakes scene. Crazy things around us are happening. Nobody understands the concept or physics behind what's happening. So instead of us having to explain it or trying to explain it or letting people ponder what that could be, we're going to throw a both-sided butt-faced monster that is talking to Ben Kingsley's character that a lot of people did not like from Iron Man 3. So that's the only negative I have. It sounds like, for the most part, that's the only negative I'm hearing in regards to this movie. Let's talk about some of the positives here. Simu Liu, I highlighted it. Jarret, you want to talk about this? You talked about him a little bit too as well, but do you want to talk about how you see him standing in regards to other Avengers in the future? Like, this guy feels like he could definitely lead an Avengers lineup down the line.
So he's like, both as a person and as a character, he's very, very charismatic, right? If you're not following Simu on Twitter, you're doing it wrong. Like, just delete your Twitter account because you don't deserve to have it anymore. But like, the character that they built him into in Shang-Chi is so genuine, right? Like, he feels like a real person, a real character. And in spite of all the crazy backstory stuff, and they did the same thing. If you guys have watched Black Widow, I'm not going to give too many spoilers there, but they did this as well with Florence Pugh's character. It is so incredibly on point how they built these people up to be broken and you know, missing parts of who they are, and yet they find that bit of themselves and build this great character out of it. And he's a powerhouse, right? Like, the way that he takes hits and all of this, and the way he stands toe to toe with somebody powered by the rings, even before he discovers his innate abilities, right? He is there as a forceful presence. And so to say that, like, he can't stand side by side with somebody like, you know, Carol Danvers, who in the MCU, you know, and again, Max and I are slightly, you know, Captain Marvel apologetics.
Let's calm down, everybody. Leave Captain Marvel alone. I'm a big Captain
To say
Marvel
that he
fan.
can't stand shoulder to shoulder with her as leading one of these teams, you're missing this movie, right? If you can watch this and still say that, you need to go back and watch the movie again, because clearly,
Well, and you're
weren't watching
literally
the same thing
missing
we were.
the end credits scene as well.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's just
fantastic.
another part
I'm-
as well. And then, yeah.
I'm ready to
Just
see
saying.
Simu in more stuff, even beyond the MCU. I think after this, people are going to start throwing deals at him like crazy. But I definitely am excited to see him in the MCU
Yeah,
more.
that was such bull crap too. How him and Aquafina were like, "Yeah, we don't know what our future is in the MCU." I was like, "Baloney." I was like, "We'll see you in Doctor Strange probably for 5 seconds somehow." My goodness gracious. Justin, is this the best action choreographed MCU movie from your perspective?
I mean, I think so. It's on par with the likes of like Winter Soldier, of like, you know, you get a lot of Marvel movies that can, especially some of the ones in the last couple of years, that can get lost in these giant action set pieces that are huge in scale. Like, again, like sort of like, you know, the reference, like, you know, the last Marvel movie to come out before this, Black Widow, like kind of, you know, the falling out of the, you know, the airplane kind of like sequence and everything, like the crashing, like hella, you know, carrier thing. But I think, you know, like the challenge with this is that by its very nature and by the nature of, you know, the character and the world that they're building, it's all, you know, various styles of martial arts, and those fights are very tight and they're very close up. And while you know they move, and while obviously, you know, like the third act, you know, big fight is, you know, on a higher scale than some of the earlier fights. The earlier fights, especially, I would say, you know, like the bus fight, especially,
Right.
which comes so much sooner in the movie than I was anticipating. I thought that was going to be a much later in Act 1 thing, but it's like 20 minutes in and they're in the bus fight already. And then, you know, the high-rise fight too, especially. With I remember seeing I think Simu tweeted out that the fight with Death Dealer, where he catches the knife in the middle of the fight to keep it going, was a practical effect that was not a CGI knife, and it took them like 30 or 40 takes of that part of the fight just to get it where he could catch the knife and keep the flow of the fight going. But I think it's a point in its favor that makes it, in my mind, immediately rewatchable. I finished watching. I got out of the movie and was like, I could go watch this again right now and not be any less entertained by anything I'm watching, because like that's like the beauty of a really, really well choreographed like martial arts movie is that it has a rewatchability about it that like a lot of other like genres of even action movies you watch Die Hard once a year because it's on TV. Maybe you watch it if you're particularly a fan, but it's on. And you're like, oh, okay, sure, it's Die Hard. But like you can watch like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or like any given Jackie Chan movie, and it's always going to be engaging to watch it because you're just like trying to like any good dance, like you're just trying to track the moves of the fight and like the rhythm and like how they're moving from just like person to person, how like every fight like progresses, like even in the opening sequence where Shongxi's mother is telling him as a child the story of how she and his father met. Like that whole sequence is beautiful. It's a fight, but it's choreographed so like lovingly, and in what is very much as I already said, but it's already very much akin to a dance, and it's just gorgeous to watch. And like there's some movies, especially in Marvel, that you watch because the fights are going to be satisfying. Like the fight, to go back to Civil War, the first appearance on screen of Black Panther when he nails Winter Soldier and gets into the fight with him. Like that is like a viscerally satisfying fight, or even the fight at the end of that movie between Winter Soldier, Cap, and Iron Man, is like it's a viscerally satisfying fight because it's an expulsion of emotion, and it's been building up to it at that point, and it's finally hit that tipping point. And so it's fine to watch it, but I can have it on and be like, oh, it's going on, and it just kind of it's a fight. You see it maybe 2 or 3 times, and you're just like, okay, that's the fight. Like, obviously, yeah, okay, he's gonna bounce the shield back and forth. Here it goes. But like the fights in Shang-Chi are just so viscerally satisfying to watch. That I think it's one of the things, again, like that, adding into the rewatchability that puts it very high up on my top Marvel movies.
Can I jump in just before, because I know Zane is going to have a lot to say about this, and I want to give him his floor.
I'm pivoting right to Zane right after you, so go ahead.
Just a quick thing on this too is like this is something that Marvel Cinematic Universe has done. They're like very like gritty. I mean, you think of the knife fight in Winter Soldier, right? Like they've done that well. And the Netflix series actually did this other side very well. We saw that with the hallway fight in Daredevil and stuff like that. And this felt like that. But even more so, this felt like maybe a love letter in MCU's take on things like a Donnie Yen movie or a John Woo movie. Like this felt very kung fu to me. And I think that's the staying power of something like this, is it does feel different enough, right? It has all the action sequences, but the action sequences, as you said, feel different enough and feel more like those things that we expected, that it has that rewatchability, right? I can watch Civil War and Winter Soldier side by side, and it's like, yeah, these feel the same. They feel like some of the same beats, some of the same fights, but this feels different enough and more like that sort of, the kung fu classics that we love.
Zane, did this not just feel like a kung fu movie? Like, so this is how I would describe it, and this is why when I thought of you, I was like, I really hope he can be available for this episode, because the first 2 acts to me are exactly what we're talking about the last 5 minutes of kung fu. But the third act adds this layer that is parallel to me of Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, a little bit like the theme felt a little Dragon Ball Z. Like, again, I'm naming classic big hits for you, right? Of like, this is your genre of our group. This, we like it, but this is for you, your genre. Did you catch that feeling and sense watching this. Like for me, Shang Chi riding a dragon in the water, in the movie I was like, this is Spirited Away live action, and the story is just as deep. How did you feel from your perspective of this scene?
This very much was a love letter to all things kung fu movies and all things of kind of that mysticism. And I think something that it's always kind of in the background that no one fully realizes, I feel like, with kung fu movies is, you get movies that have to do with magic, and everyone's like, oh, you have that suspension of belief. Oh, it's because of magic. Or you take a sci-fi movie, there's a suspension of belief of, oh, it's just a future technology. For whatever reason, people always forget that there's that same feeling in kung fu movies. I don't know if it's because of it's the grounded in the realism of like, oh, you're actually performing and actually fighting. Like this is something that's not fully CGI, but there's a suspension of belief when you get into kind of that mystic feeling of, you're going through the forms of, and as the wind is swirling and using the wind and harnessing, the wind, you're like, well, I don't know why these leaves are swirling, but it adds to that effect. And you're like, I completely don't question it because it's a kung fu movie. Like it just fits with that feel and the flow. And like Justin had mentioned, like so much of this, it feels like a dance. It's like flowing of water almost. And when you have really good choreography, that's what makes it so much more rewatchable because, yeah, not only is it in a movie, and I think what sets it apart from, what you have in Civil War or, the fight with Cap, Bucky, and Iron Man, like, that fight had more stakes. Like, it's less of a dance than, hey, this fight is serving a purpose. In martial arts movies and a lot of kung fu movies, you almost have to look at a lot of these fights that are drawn out as the fight itself tells a story. And so right. From each move, from each grasp, lock to everything, like everything has to go in correct order for it to flow. And this movie does such a good job of capturing that. And I knew that instantly from that first scene with the mom and the dad fighting. And that's when I was...
Wenwu and Sue?
Yeah. I was like, I couldn't remember the names. But that's when I was like, they nailed it. Like whoever, when they were getting the choreography and everything down for this, they were like, we're going to take what people love from these kung fu movies, like that add that mysticism. We're going to take that, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon feel, that suspension that we're flying through the air kind of, have this dance. But then as the movie went on, you got, into the skyscraper, some of these other fights. Like, they were like, we're going to take some of this Bruce Lee feel, just some of this brute, like, we're just going to have this fight. And, like, they kind of just melded together all these just different aspects of it. And, like I said, I feel like it was a beautiful love letter to all...
I agree.
All the things meshed.
Seven Samurai.
Right. And it all fit
great.
in there.
Like, that's so on point.
Right. And it all fit in there and it flowed so well. And just the way, like I said, a fight has to flow. And not only did the choreography of the fight flow through the story, it also helped the entire story flow as well. And that to me, like that.
It did feel like the third act got really, really big, really, really quick. But I guess with the 10 rings as I wouldn't even call it, I don't know if I'd even call them a MacGuffin. Like, they're an artifact that's being used by the villain. The 10 rings needed something bigger to go against. It couldn't just be a guy fighting him. I don't know. I don't know really how I'm trying to say this. I guess I'm trying to make the point that they had to up the stakes in some capacity. I guess just for me to see two flying dragons or death soul eaters flying in the air really went from 0 to 1,000 very quickly on an already.
Zayne got his kaiju.
Yeah, it's kaiju's now are in the building, right? Like, and they're in another universe is kind of what they said because that's a portal to another universe, right? So. Multiverse potentially. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I think that's that. I'm just saying that's just on the table now. Justin, was this third act too big for you in the sense of it took you out of the story, or was this just another formulaic Marvel thing from your perspective, and the rest of the story was great and fantastic that it didn't matter.
I think it didn't really take me out of it at all. I think that, again, like you were saying, it's very much a Marvel thing now, is that you kind of always expect that the third act is going to be some kind of big set piece, to really kind of let the heroes stretch their legs, so to speak, and really kind of show off what they can do or what they've spent, the movie training to do or learning to do. And so I don't think it really, it definitely kind of rocketed up, but I feel like there was at least like the slightest little bit of setup for it in, like the notion of like the entire, their dad's, Wenwu's whole monologue about why he was bringing his kids back together was because he wanted to reunite his family because he'd been hearing the voice of his dead wife, and them managing to break out and find their way to the the city and of Talo and find out about this whole mythology that was kind of going to be there. And so I don't feel like it definitely jumped up. I don't know, but I don't think that it necessarily took me out of the whole thing.
Yeah, and Wenwu, that being, because in my mind going into this movie, the ending was way different.
Right. Oh yeah.
The ending was way different than what I was looking at on screen.
Yeah, I was
yeah.
I was anticipating, again, like in typical Marvel formula, I was anticipating just the standard showdown of the hero and the villain, who is the opposite version of the hero, fighting, and
right.
The hero having the one-up because he either has more heart, or they believe in themselves more,
right,
or they've managed to fully understand their powers. And honestly, I will say this is another point that I very much give in Shang-Chi's favor as a movie, is that it manages to sidestep it being an origin movie for all intents and purposes very easily and very smartly. In terms of the strategic uses of the flashbacks throughout the movie at strategic points, so that you could kind of get to see a little context for like moments that were happening and why certain things mattered in terms of how characters were acting or what characters said or did. But another thing that I really liked about it was that like there was no Iron Man having to build the armor. There was no Peter getting bitten by a spider, and there was no like while there was in Act 3 a training montage that was to build up for this huge fight that was going to happen between them and the forces of Wenwu, and hopefully, but ultimately, against the Dweller in Dark and all these eldritch monstrosities. But there wasn't one in the beginning where he was like having to figure out. He didn't have to learn. We didn't have to watch Shang-Chi learn kung fu, even though we did. But he was, when we meet him, he's already at that level. He already is a living weapon. He is the master of kung. Like he is a master of kung fu, and I think that is something that kind of helps the pacing of the movie. Is that's why you can have the bus fight happen like 20 minutes in, because you don't have to worry about him like, oh wow, I can do kung fu. It's like, no, I could always do kung fu, and I've had to keep it on the super DL so that my dad doesn't find me and try to kill me and anyone I might care about. And so I liked that part of it a lot in terms of managing to more or less keep in line with the promise that was started after Doctor Strange, that Kevin Feige gave, of no more Marvel origin movies, where the entirety of the first act is just like meeting this character and then watching them have watching them the whole hero's journey bit of it. You could just kind of be like, okay, here they are, and they're going to do some cool superhero shit, and it's like dope. That's all we really need. Like give us like context clues and environmental storytelling to tell us any other bits that might be like interesting information, but put them on the path and get them going right from the start,
and continue to break apart different genres as they've done. And that's what this was. This was breaking down the kung fu genre. Zane, you eloquently said that. We're not going to go back down that path. Jarret, to close us out here, did the post-credit scenes land for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I liked them. I think it took it in a weird twist that I wasn't expecting. When I heard that there was post-credit scenes, I just began like churning through like, okay, what happens next? What happens next? Obviously, there is the like obligatory kicking the ball down the line, which we got with his meeting with Carol Danvers and Bruce Banner. Anyone else think that Bruce Banner looked really, really, really old for some reason? Like, I don't know if that was just me in the theater.
I think that was, you know, kind of in purpose, kind of like with him keeping his arm in the sling of. I feel like this, they definitely, like, I don't know if it's essentially aged up, but like wearied up Bruce Banner, which I think is cool in keeping with the notion that like the damage that was done to him in Endgame is gonna be here for a while. It's not something that like the natural like healing factor of the Hulk can fix. It's like when you sustain that level of like a cosmic injury, there's no real easy walking back from it.
And you've got to set the table for She-Hulk.
Right. I think it also like what it did well is the same thing that we sort of saw at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, right? When they set up that, you know, he's not really human, right? They have to have something to hook you in for the next one. And the question about what are the rings, where do they come from, all that does a good job sinking its hooks into you. The thing that I really liked, and I called that like they had to introduce some other villain or leave something at the end for that. I actually thought that it was going to be the Dweller in Darkness, like a piece of it surviving, and it ended up being his sister taking over the 10 rings. And I thought Xialing. I thought that was such a cool way to do that. I think the Dweller in Darkness still being around would have been a little cheesy, and I don't think I would have liked that. The flip of the 10 rings I really liked.
Yeah, and that's a great group to keep around for a Disney Plus show or even down the line tag teaming with a bigger villain, right? So I go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say it's also why I loved that, you know, in lieu of the standard "this character will return" line, you got the double meaning of the 10 rings will return. So
right.
I mean, you know, it means that obviously we're going to see more of Shang-Chi, but also we're going to see way more of the 10 rings now that his sister is overseeing it and kind of seeing the shift that she might take on this worldwide, you know, crime ring.
There's just a lot of like crime lords going around the MCU, right?
Yeah.
Like they are just. That's the big thing that Endgame produced.
I'm not even like I would 100% love to watch Xialing go against the Power Broker, go against Sharon Carter. I think that'd be really interesting to see.
That'd be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun for a season 2 of Captain America and the Winter Soldier if they pivoted to that instead of a fourth movie. I don't know. 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 98% audience score. So I mean, everybody loves this movie, man. That's the reality of it, and it looks like it's going to do big things in regards to the context of COVID. It's going to be in that 80 million range for a 4-day weekend, which is what I would call a win for Marvel. So, great job to them.
Can I throw one more thing in here that I noticed?
No, Zane, we've got to go. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, that's fair. Well, no, like I'm sure you guys saw it too, but I don't understand or fully like where it's going. But yet, we had another villain appearance with the color purple. With the Dealer in Darkness, when it got powered up, it turned purple.
So, are you leaning towards Dormammu, or what are you trying to?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, I don't know where this is going, because, like, we had that with Agatha. Her suit was purple in the end. We had from...
I mean, way back in Guardians, you had Ronan the Accuser. Like the power stone, like, yeah. Right,
like, you had purple, and especially now on this new stuff, there's been a prevalence of the color purple, and I noticed it again, yeah, and I'm like, I don't know, yeah, Kang, you had purple with the mask of in Falcon and the Winter Soldier with why am I blanking? but yeah, like
Zemo,
yeah,
Zemo, yeah.
And so like I'm noticing like there's this significant trend now that like purple being tied to the villain, and I'm like, is this gonna crescendo into something? Is this gonna mean something, or are they just like, hey, we're gonna make our villains purple now? Like,
no, this is gonna end with Kang answering to Justin Hammer.
There it is. Yeah.
Gross.
There you go.
This, I don't know if you guys caught it, Infinity Bros, but this is our new segment that we're about to debut. I know Zane wasn't supposed to spoil it, but we are getting Zane's Color Theory Hour. So look forward to that in future episodes. If and when we do get Zane on. Yeah.
It's the meme of Zane with all the yarn in his room just covered.
Right. What does it mean? The purple.
It's everywhere.
I will say to connect a dot, again, kicking the ball down the line, though this version of the Dweller in Darkness obviously doesn't have any direct or obvious indication of it. In the comics, he does, the comics version of Dweller in Darkness is both a villain of Doctor Strange's and has ties with the Fear Lords, one of whom is obviously Nightmare, who we know is going to be the villain or one of the villains of Multiverse of Madness. So, and I mean, obviously, I feel like the Wong cameo too kind of intrinsically is kind of bridging that as well.
I agree. Doctor Strange and Shang-Chi are definitely teaming up for something down the line.
It felt on purpose. Yeah, absolutely.
It totally did. I mean, we didn't talk about Abomination. Apparently, Tim Roth did voice his sound effect. I don't know if they took his facial expressions for that. I just know the article I read from Deadline said he voiced it because it was confirmed by the director. So it's something to note. But if Abomination is in this, then he's clearly back for something down the line, right? So Zane, maybe get less on the color purple, more on Abomination. Get on that.
And Trevor, okay? Right? Sir Ben Kingsley and all his acting range.
Jarret, let's just move on. I said I wasn't going to disagree with Justin about something, and then right out the gate we disagreed.
We get a buddy cop show with Abomination and Trevor Slattery. Just those two.
Great.
I would rather watch Venom than do that. That's where I'm at in regards to my Marvel viewing. So check this out. I'm going to go back. My wife didn't get to come with me the first time, so we're going to go see it when she's done with her crazy work schedule this weekend. But Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings, go see it. This is going to be a hit, and a lot of people are going to be talking about Shang-Chi for a while. And pretty wild that they got Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh in the same movie.
Yeah.
That's wild. We didn't really have much time to talk about that, but that is remarkable. It's cool to watch a movie when everybody knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's nice.
Let's talk about what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. It has everybody back. Jeffrey Wright, Benedict Cumberbatch, Rachel McAdams, Benedict Wong, Tilda Swinton, and then a new character, Ike Amadi, plays Obeng. And this was written by A.C. Bradley, obviously adapted from Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, et cetera, et cetera. Justin, we're going to start again with you, man. What's your rating of this episode? And if you could kind of briefly share your reviews of the previous 3 episodes and what you've thought of What If so far as a series.
I think What If has served a really nice, like, it's sort of been like a sample platter of, like, this is what the multiverse means. This is what we mean when we talk about the multiverse in the MCU. And, like, multiple timelines and variants kind of, springboarding off of Loki and the end of that. And I think it's been a really kind of a cool opportunity to kind of look at some of these, alternate hypotheticals from the, Captain Carter and from the T'Challa Star-Lord, and the third episode of showing Ant-Man actually being a threat and possibly one of the more dangerous members of the Avengers when given the right motivation. But this one was definitely like the bummeriest of bummer episodes. Just like in terms of like in setup and in terms of watching like as you were saying earlier, like the kind of Breaking Bad of Doctor Strange and his descent into obsession and madness and trying to chase the power needed to undo this one event, and seeing like again, like you're watching a dude in absolute agony for ostensibly centuries to hear him tell it, and ultimately not only not being able to save and stop change the one thing that he could change if he could, but end his universe in doing so and end up the last surviving member of his entire timeline because of it, and just having to suffer in isolation, like going again. It's a very it's a very almost like Twilight Zone-esque, like ironic fate of a guy who was trying to do everything in his power to make it so that he didn't have to go through life alone, ending up alone anyways because of it. But I think all in all, I would say it's definitely been one of the strongest episodes of the series so far, and I would give it a solid 5, verging on 6. But I think at the very least a very, very solid 5.
Okay, Zane.
Yeah, like I loved the tone on this was a bit of a shift, and just that the whole message of grief it gave was such a powerful image. And like Justin said, the whole thing, he was so scared about being alone, and it ends with "you are alone." And like that's such just a larger metaphor on like grief, this feeling of being alone. But it also kind of shows of like this is why it's essential to have that healing of like moving on, and like that kind of like that's what the other Doctor Strange tries to get this one to do, of you have to move on or else that grief is going to eat you and you truly will be alone. And like that's what we saw at the end. He's the only thing left in that universe. And so I think the tone on this one was just different. Like, yeah, you had everything with like Ant-Man just completely snapping, but like on all the other ones, in essence, the good guy still won. On this one, you're like, the cost of this is great. And even in that scene when he's there, like begging the Watcher to do something, and the Watcher was like, "No, like you did this yourself." Like that was just a tonal shift. Personally, it's my favorite one so far, just because I was like, they took everything, kind of flipped on its head, and we were like, "Yeah, we're gonna have a deep story on this. Like we are gonna get into." Heavier things. Like it's not just going to be, oh, Peggy Carter got the serum, or oh, it's fun and you got, T'Challa's Star-Lord. Like this one's a heavier thing. So for me, I give this episode a 5.5 out of 6. Like it's one that sticks with you, and it's definitely one you sit and think about, and you're like there's heavier content there, I feel like, than in previous ones.
The T'Challa episode is really difficult to top for me simply because of Chadwick Boseman's passing.
Right.
Like that's the reason that feels like such a, to be honest, it was a good episode, but if he didn't pass, part of me would definitely say this episode is the best one of the season.
Right.
So that's I'm going to give this a 6. I mean, this is exactly, there's so much disrespect for Doctor Strange at times from people. In regard, like even just recently with the Spider-Man stuff of like, oh, I can't believe he would potentially mess with the multiverse. It's like, do you not understand that the guy is as arrogant as Tony Stark, right? And like thinks he can, like he totally thinks he can do whatever he wants. Like, let's not act like, and he wants to, don't get me wrong, he wants to protect the fabric of reality, but he also is so intelligent. And this episode really highlights that and shows just like, he just deep dives into how to do this and how to save her. And you talked about the tonal shift. We finally got an episode where Jeffrey Wright can finally act alongside somebody instead of just being a narrator. That's one thing that's been frustrating for me. I want to see more of the Watcher talking about what's going on instead of narrating the situation. I think he needs to be more invested as a character in this. But nonetheless, 6 out of 6. You guys highlighted the best parts. I think it's great, too, that this feels like it makes Doctor Strange a better movie.
Yeah.
To me. This makes Doctor Strange a much better movie. And this makes the character of Doctor Strange and what he did in Infinity War and what he did in Endgame and what he's going to do in this Spider-Man movie coming up. He's just such a rich character that doesn't get nearly enough time to flesh out how deep and thoughtful he is. I feel like this episode shows this. And the battle that he has with him is the best scene we've had in this series so far, in my opinion. So, Jarret, go ahead.
Well, Max, I hope you can breathe a sigh of relief because I'm about to take all the angry internet nerds away from your bad Trevor Slattery take with my will probably be a bad take. I give this a 3 out of
Wow.
6. I was not as hot on this one as everybody else was. I felt like this one was a little bit of the fire hydrant to the face for me. I give it a
Wow.
3 because of the implications, the greater implications of the Marvel Universe that it introduces, right? Things like what happens when a reality collapses, what happens when we go past those points. Even the ancient one, right? Like in previous iterations, it's always been protect the timeline, protect the timeline, protect the timeline. But we see her take a risk and split Doctor Strange, which shows that this might be a post Loki thing or whatever. So the
Yeah,
implications
but she
of the greater
gave up.
multiverse,
She gave up the stone in Endgame too.
yeah.
Don't act like this is the first time she's ever done anything like that.
But like the implication was that come back and fix it, right? We had no promise of that with Doctor Strange with this episode. I don't know if it was just like coincidence or happy accident in the same way that, you know, we talked about the date for the on WandaVision, how that was probably more happy accident than it was intentional. But I felt like when the universes were dissolving a little bit, we kind of got some Kirby dots in there, which was a little bit into the Spider-Verse. And I loved that. I loved every bit of that. The only reason I'm down on this, so hear me out, because I know the internet angry nerds are going to come after me. It felt like we kind of just kept seeing the same thing over and over again. And I know it was for story development, but like when you're spending 20 minutes having him relive her death over and over again, I got the pain of that in the first 5 minutes. You didn't have to keep doing it. And then him fighting all those monsters, like we got that the first 2 or 3 times. We didn't need 45 monsters that he was absorbing. That felt a little like drawn out for me.
God, you just aren't any fun at the party, are you? You just can't. You just couldn't stand it that there was just. I needed good things. There was too many bad things in this.
Mark is listening to this right now, and he just put down his chalk from writing up, you know, a tally on your bad take. And he put my second one up there, the first being Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah,
and he's like, this is number 2 for sure.
This is for sure one of your legendary takes, right, Jared? I mean, this is
my
definitely
new
going to the Hall
Thor,
of Fame
or
for
not
us.
Thor Ragnarok, Thor Dark World. Is this my new Thor Dark World?
This might be, for those that don't know, Jarrett years ago. Like we're on years now. Years ago, when asked what the best CGI in a movie was, said Thor: The Dark World. And to this day, we still don't get what you're talking about. We still right now don't have a clue what you were trying to say. Haven't a clue.
Horrible movie.
Haven't
great
an
CGI.
idea. Man, so you just felt this was redundant. That's what you're saying.
I do. I felt like I got the story. I got the beats that they were going for. The fight scene was great. And the implications of the greater universe and the multiverse was great. But I felt like they kept hitting the same beat over and over and over and over again. And I was like, cool, I got it. Let's move on.
My name's Jarret, and I shouldn't have to evolve my Pokemon. They should just be at the max evolution already.
I don't need to fight all of these battles. I just want a Bulbasaur.
I shouldn't have to train and get XP. They should be at max level.
Oh, yeah, Jared. This is bad, dude. I mean, I see what you're saying though. Fun fact about this episode too: Leslie Bibb, who plays Christine Everhart, was in this.
Yeah,
episode. That was great.
I didn't notice that until the end credits. I was like, oh snap! I was like, oh, what
that was fun.
What a weirdly small in thing for this episode to get back.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, I'll do as much MCU stuff as you'll let me. She's like, I will ride that gravy train till I can't, man. I mean, it's cool too to see, like, because they've talked about with What If, they're setting up something down the line. Could this be the big bad? Is a question I guess some people have asked. I don't think so. I think he's going to stay self-contained, but there's other things coming down the line that are rumored that I'm not going to share.
I think I think that it's less necessarily setting up like a character, at least so far. I don't think it's not so much like setting up like any particular character or characters, but more setting up like this is the kind of implication of stuff that we will see by the end of this season of what happens when you start mixing the multiverse and when the walls between these universes get thinner and the implications of that. Like I also think that this episode also is a step towards getting to see Uatu get closer to how he is in the comics, where he won't interfere unless it's something he really probably shouldn't let happen. And then he'll come up and be like, hey guys, their whole world's about to be destroyed. You should probably do something about this. Get by. Because it was the first time, it wasn't until we got to see Doctor Strange after grinding himself against all the various Rattata and Oddishes that he was powerful enough to perceive that Uatu was even there.
Right.
And then at the end of it, screaming for help and watching Uatu at least being like I am here. I know that these last 3 episodes I've been this kind of omniscient, kind of in the background. If you look close, I'm in a reflection of a mirror or something. But it's he is literally always there and could at any point step in and do something. But it's just him being oh yeah, no, I gotta stick to the code. I gotta stick to the code. And so I am highly anticipating that by the end of this season, we're gonna watch him break that code.
I want more Jeffrey Wright. You didn't hire Jeffrey Wright just to sit here and narrate 2 paragraphs. Come on. Let's get him in there and let him do his thing.
Yeah.
Come on. This is, in my opinion, still, even with Benedict, I think Jeffrey Wright's the best actor that's in this episode still.
What if the
I just like that we're one step
really
closer
think
to Sam Alexander's Nova and Original Sin.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's all
say.
I care.
I was
can't
gonna
wait.
say, what if they end What If with Original Sin and then just roll into that? Watcher, you've been watching all this stuff. Nah, I'm all about it.
Okay, so Justin, where does this all go from your perspective? We've talked about this on our show. So, how are they culminating all this? Because clearly the multiverse has a clear end point in Kevin Feige's mind. Are you thinking this is Secret Wars, or are you leaning kind of towards Jarret, who's had Original Sin as the precursor, and then Battle World or something like that comes up?
I mean, it's interesting to me because if you look back, I think it was around the time that either Infinity War was going to come out or around the time before Endgame came out. But in one interview or another, Kevin Feige has stated that the way that the Avengers were always kind of the people at the heart of the big events leading up to Infinity War and Endgame, the ones that they were kind of the focal points of it, that Spider-Man was going to be the focal point of Phase 4, and that it was going to be his actions that kicked off, and it was on his shoulders that a lot of the repercussions of whatever was going to happen would land on. And I think obviously we're watching In No Way Home, and we're watching with the multiverse, the 1, 2, 3 combo of Wanda and Sylvie and Doctor Strange all just shattering the multiverse and bringing it all together. Building towards. I would not be surprised if we went towards Secret Wars. If we got to here's what I'll say. Here's what I think the safe bet is, and here is my absolute bonkers out of left field. Would love to see them.
That's what we're here for.
Feed me, Mama Bird. Let's go.
So I would love. I think the safe bet is if they go with Secret Wars, especially because we know that the Grandmaster is still around. We know that we know that the Collector, we know that these Elders of the Universe, we know that we're getting the Celestials more with the Eternals, and so I wouldn't be surprised if, especially with Kang in the mix too. Hell, I would love to see if they end up doing here's the current lineup of the Avengers as they stand. Great. Now we're gonna make you fight the Squadron Sinister. If they just brought in
wow,
maybe this is how what if that's how we get Henry Cavill in the MCU is he plays an evil, he plays Hyperion. But I think that kind of seeing this giant, seeing something that we didn't really, that we got to see in the last 10 minutes of Endgame, and in bits and pieces throughout Civil War, is a real huge knockdown drag out super fight of just a bunch of people with superpowers all fighting at the same time. Would be interesting to see. And I feel getting to see multiversal variants show up and kind of a competition, not just on the simple scale of, bringing in the Beyonder. Hell, you could probably, even now that we have Jeffrey Wright, you could probably bring in the Watcher and a lot more stuff of like that, of like establishing who gets to be, because ultimately you break it, the next journey is going to be getting order, trying to reestablish it. And so a Secret Wars type battle could be set to determine who gets to be the prime universe, who gets to be the prime MCU universe, and who has to be relegated to alternate timelines that I think that'd be interesting to see. Now, my absolute bonkers pitch out of left field would be Secret Wars, the 2015 version, in which Doctor Doom becomes God in order to reset the universe. And given that we know we're getting Fantastic Four, at the very least at the end of Phase 4, I think it would be very interesting in bringing in Doom and really establishing, and I'm not saying we're going to introduce Doom and then he's going to become God. I do think that there are still steps in between those to take, but I think it would be interesting if, in seeing all this multiversal, quantum realm, all this big and small and Kirby cosmic scale stuff that is going towards, of watching the Doctor Doom establishing himself as a figurehead of the unifier, of trying to reestablish, which could give us kind of weird, almost, like I said, see the weird stuff that we saw out of that Secret Wars and out of everything, as with and then have that small band within it that knows that something isn't right and is trying to reset the universe again in terms of how everything could go. I think that would be a wild one to happen as well.
Have him tear Thanos' spine.
Oh God, I would just
5 seconds into the movie.
Oh man, that would be even if they don't necessarily go with the 2015 Secret Wars, if they end up doing Secret Wars and like bringing back the enemies of everyone, resurrecting, having a team of supervillains that is so resurrected of all the killed and vanquished supervillains, of just having that moment of Doom establishing himself as the leader of the villain team, and Thanos trying to step to him, and him just ripping Thanos' spine out, and just being like, no, I'm the leader. It's like, this is me. This isn't a debate. I'm saying I'm leading us, and everyone's going to fall in line.
All in. Doctor Doom, I can't wait to see what Kevin Feige does with Doctor Doom. It's just like, it's ridiculous. We're way over time, guys. Way over time.
Love that.
About 30 minutes over. We're not going to do top 5 today. We put it on the front end. I'll edit it out. But Justin, dude, this is so much fun, man. Thank you for taking time to be with us. Everything that Justin talked about in regards to TikTok, we actually referenced the TikTok he talked about on the front end. I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. Check him out on TikTok. Give him a follow. Leave a comment, leave a like on those videos. And I'm telling you guys, when you watch an episode of What If or Loki or anything you're watching, one of my first go-tos is Justin. He seems to be very on top of it in regards to Easter eggs, spoilers, and things that are coming down the line. As you've heard on this episode, he is very astute and very intelligent in regards to this stuff. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge, but also very welcoming. So, Justin, thank you for making time to be with us.
Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
You're the man, dude. Zayne, you did all right. You did okay today.
Thanks. Every day I wake up and I open my eyes and my feet hit the floor and I'm like, what would make today a good day is Max telling me I did okay.
I was thinking about just editing it too. Every day I wake up and then transitioning to Jarret.
Just go right to Jarret. Just cut it out.
See what people would say. Yeah. Well, we're glad you came on. Thank you for being here. We're grateful for you. Jarret, you know what? You did a great job. You did an okay job. You did offend us on the back end with the Doctor Strange take.
I'm happy for my Twitter's going to blow up. Maybe not for the reasons I want to, but my Twitter is going to blow up after this. So there's always that.
Oh, congratulations for having another bad take and sharing a authentic opinion.
Yeah, number 2 for me.
That got immediately
feels
mocked.
Good.
Yeah, thank you for not being part of the hype.
This must be what Robbie feels like every time he's on. It's like, it's kind of a high,
This is what it feels like. Yeah, that's it right here. So, great episode, dude. And we're looking forward to being with you again. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. check us out on Twitch, guys. We are gaming. We are doing a lot of Pokemon polls, a lot of good things. So make sure you're following us at the Infinity Bros on there. You can find us at theinfinitybros.com. And as always, we love you guys 3000. We will talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.